What's up, top 10 fam? Hope you're having an awesome day and welcome back to another video. Guys, this was a mission and a half, let me tell you. We already did 4 parts of our other series, Creepy Unsolved Mysteries, so to do this video and have 40 mysteries I couldn't use was tough. But fret not, because Eamon always delivers and none of these are repeats. Go me. So with that being said, let's just jump the hell in. These are the top 10 scary unsolved mysteries you've never heard of. Starting us off with number 10 is Esther Cox. Now this case took place in Amherst, Nova Scotia between 1878 and 1879 and focuses on an 18-year-old girl called Esther Cox. At the time, she lived with her married sister and her family as well as some of her own siblings. After suffering from attempted sexual assault by a friend, Esther changed and became very distressed. After that event, the hauntings began. Noises throughout the night, banging, objects flying across the room, and more. Esther herself also felt the effects. She started having seizures during which her body would actually swell up and she would become feverish and cold. After the family couldn't take it anymore, a doctor was called in and during his visit, things really hit the fan. Scratching noises were heard all over the house and the words "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill" just randomly appeared above her bed. Now this continued for months and even locals and visitors that came to the house saw the phenomenon for themselves. Now Esther got quite sick for 2 weeks during this period and that's when all the happenings just kind of stopped for a while, but once she was better, they all started up again. See, the devil works harder than anyone. But this time, fires would break out in the house and she claimed now she could see the ghost and it was telling her to leave the house or it would burn the house down. By January 1879, she moved in with a different family, but it still continued. She was frequently hurt by the spirits and at one point was even stabbed in the back with a knife. Now Walter Hubble went to investigate the case and saw it with his own eyes. He would see things moving and fires happening even when Esther was fully in his view, meaning she obviously didn't do it herself. She later moved into another house where the barn fully burned down and people suspected her for arson. Till this day, no one has any idea why she was haunted or cursed by these spirits or what they wanted with her. Coming in at number 9 is Tarare. I'm pretty sure I said that wrong, it's fine. Now Tarare was a French soldier and showman during the 1700s, but he was known for being able to eat literally anything. He was always hungry, like myself, and would eat things like stones, live animals, utensils, baskets of apples, and so on. Despite eating non-stop, he would never gain weight. He was pretty much skinny his whole life, but when he hadn't eaten, his skin would weirdly hang loose around his abdomen, but when he was full, it would just stretch out like a balloon. His cheeks could stretch so much that he could fit 12 apples or eggs in his mouth at once. Like, can you imagine? I can't even fit one whole apple in my mouth. Like, that's a big feat. And to make matters worse, he had some nasty body odor. Like, people said you had to be 20 steps away from him to even endure it. He would sweat like nobody's business and his stench would get worse after he had eaten. His eyes would also become red and this visible vapor would just be coming off his body. It was weird. Despite eating like a sumo wrestler, he never actually vomited or anything like that, but he did have chronic diarrhea, which is problematic in and of itself. Now the French government actually used him for a time to eat sensitive documents because they would then be picked out of his when he reached his destination. That obviously did not go well and he sought medical help. There was no cure. When he tried dieting, he would just turn cannibalistic. While at the hospital, he would sneak out and try and eat bodies in the morgue, and anytime a child went missing from their room, the staff always assumed Tarare had eaten them. He died years later and his insatiable appetite was never explained. We just don't know why he was the way he was. Like, why are you like this? Things I ask myself every day. I had a large bubble tea yesterday and I'm just like, why are you like this? I don't know. At number 8 we have Roanoke, aka the Lost Colony. So back in 1587, Josh White led a colony to Roanoke Island, which is present-day Dare County in North Carolina. Now before Josh, 2 attempts were already made to try and found the first English settlement in North America, but both attempts failed due to many reasons. The main one being bad relations with the local Native Americans. Either way, when Josh got there, supplies and resources were slim, so he went back to England to get more supplies in 1588. Now he told the residents of the colony that if the colony was taken by force, to carve a cross in a nearby tree so he'd know. Like, I love how he'd think if the colony was being overtaken, the first thing they'd think of would be like, oh wait, amidst this pillaging, let me quickly carve a cross into a tree. Like, nah B, we're trying to save our lives, we're trying to save our belongings. Either way, he ended up coming back in 1590 to find the settlement meticulously abandoned. All the fortifications were dismantled with care, but he found no carved cross anywhere. Instead, he found the word Croatoan carved into a post, and that was actually the name of a native tribe that were allied with the English at the time. White assumed that meant the colonists moved to Croatoan Island, but investigations pointed to them being killed by the Powhatan tribe. Yet there was no evidence of a massacre, so again we have no idea where these people went, they just disappeared. But not before carefully dismantling their village. Filling our number 7 slot is Paula Jean Weldon. So back in the 1940s, Paula was a college student studying at Bennington College in Vermont. Now she was a sociable, smart girl, she had a part-time job and liked hiking. That could be her Tinder bio. No, I'm kidding. So one day she decided to walk a portion of the long trail, which was a few miles away from her campus. So that day she finished her shift and went. She didn't even pack extra clothes or money, she didn't even take a bag. Now she went with a friend half the way and then hitchhiked the rest of the way, and when she got there, a group of hikers recalled running into her and Paula asking them a bunch of questions. She was on the trail late in the afternoon, so darkness was very much approaching ASAP Rocky, and either way, Paula never came back to her dorm. Her roommate assumed she was just at the library, but after she hadn't returned by the next morning, she notified college administration. The search began. It started on campus and then spread to Long Trail. The college was even closed for a few days and hundreds of volunteers helped to search. Even air searchers found nothing, and when her dad heard about her disappearance, he bizarrely disappeared himself for 36 hours. Apparently, Paula's family life was troubled and his weird behavior made him a prime suspect. People assumed Paula had gotten lost and died on the trail, but a waitress in Massachusetts claimed she had served an agitated woman that matched Paula's description to a T. 15 years later, a lumberjack said he had followed Paula into the woods and knew where her body was, and then admitted he was joking. Can't joke about that. People are actually concerned. Either way, her body was never found and her disappearance never solved. Now at number 6 are the craters. So in the middle of 2014, a huge hole was spotted in permafrost by some helicopter pilots in the Yamal region in Russia. A few days later, a group of reindeer herders found a second hole, and a third one was found later on as well. And no one knows how or why they were formed. Before 2014, Yamal didn't even have one sinkhole or crater, and now seemingly overnight it had 3. People were speculating that they were the result of meteorites, but clearly not, otherwise we'd all have known about it. Others thought they were of extraterrestrial origin, but that was quickly ruled out as well. Scientists narrowed it down to being due to gas. A lot of methane was found in the earth in the areas where the holes formed, so they believe this could have been why the holes were created. But this was never proven, so I mean, where the hell will the next one appear? In Toronto? How am I meant to know? Is it gonna appear right now in the studio? I really hope not, fingers crossed. I'm about to get swallowed up. Down I go. Coming in at number 5 are the jars. Marine archaeologist and treasure hunter Robert Marks has achieved a lot, but it wasn't until October 1982 that he discovered something profound. In Guanabara Bay near Rio de Janeiro, Marks found an underwater field the size of 3 tennis courts a mere 3 miles away from the shore. In the field, he found the remains of over 200 Roman ceramic jars, including a few that were fully intact. These types of packing containers were usually a sign of Roman shipwreck, and if that is true, that could mean the Romans reached Brazil 1,700 years earlier than Pedro Alvarez Cabral, the man who claimed to have discovered it in 1500. Now, the Romans traded mostly in Mediterranean and Middle Eastern ports, so they really had no incentive to invest in ships that would cross the ocean, but I mean, they did sail to India, so I mean, what's to say someone didn't go to Brazil? The country actually closed the Bay of Jars a year later in fear of looters, but Marx disagrees. He was adamant that they just didn't want more exploration in the area to challenge their official history, since they do have a really good tie with Portugal. So I guess we'll never truly know until Brazil opens it up again. I'm waiting on you, Brazil. The next move is yours. At number 4 is Benjamin Bathurst. Now Ben, I'm gonna just call him Ben, was a British diplomat envoy in the early 1800s. He was young, he was hot, and he was damn good at his job. In 1809, after conducting a mission in Austria, he was on his way home but thought avoiding the French would be best because he was literally just in Austria trying to convince them to attack Napoleon's forces. He was armed to the teeth and decided to travel through Germany under a German name with his German courier Herr Kraus. Now, the two stopped at a post house and went to an inn called the White Swan. After having dinner and resting, they were told the horses were ready to go at 9 p.m. Ben left his room and went out the door, with Kraus following seconds behind him. But when Kraus came out of the inn, Ben was absolutely nowhere to be found. Not near the horses, not nearby, not in the bathroom, nowhere. Now, initially this wasn't really a big deal since murders and robberies were so common back then, but it just wasn't understandable. When the news got to England weeks later, Ben's wife went to Germany to find him, but to no avail. Apparently, a hostler named August had stopped the inn that day looking for Ben and went after him. Years and years later, his clothing was found in the area surrounding Perleberg, but his body was never found. Honestly, he was probably arrested by some French people or just straight up killed. My theories. Filling our number 3 slot is The Money Heist, like the Spanish Netflix show, but not as good. But oh my god, if you guys haven't seen that, you need to get on that. It's so good. Either way, back in April of 1989, an armored car in Minnesota was ambushed by a gang of armed robbers. Within 1 minute, this gang managed to get $1 million from this car. How did they get it? 2 of them stood guard with machine guns, and another dude put a fake bomb on the hood of the car to obviously, scare the out of the people inside of it. Now, the fake explosive was suspiciously similar to another robbery that had happened in Baltimore 3 years prior. The gang had gotten away both times and struck again a year later. After extensive investigation, the FBI believed the gang wasn't just any group of common criminals. Their protocol, their plan, and procedure was just way too precise for them to be just anyone. They believe they're all heavily trained in attack scenarios and ambushing, so maybe they're ex-military, I have no clue. Either way, there's a gang of money heist-esque robbers on the loose, and no one knows who the hell they are and where they are. Great. Now at number 2 is Julia Wallace. Now Julia was a British housewife married to a man named William. On the 19th of January 1931, William went to his chess club for a game, but when he got there, he was told someone had left a message for him. The message was from a man called Qualtrough, and William had no clue who that was, but the message told him to go to 25 Menlove Gardens East. And for some reason, he actually listened. Like, one, why would you listen to someone you don't know, especially when their name is frickin' Qualtrough? Either way, he went to the address the next day to find out it wasn't even real after spending an hour trying to find it. By the time he got home, he walked into his house to discover Julia beaten lying in their parlor. Shocked and horrified, William didn't even know what to do, but he also didn't have the chance because he was arrested straight away. Police thought he had left himself a fake message since the call from Qualtrough came from a telephone box only a few hundred yards away from his chess club. He was sentenced to death, but thankfully his case was brought up and overturned by the jury. Yet till this day, no one was ever charged with the crime, and no one knows who Qualtrough is, who killed her, nothing at all. And finally, at number 1 are The Secret. So back in the 80s, the Oregon State prison system had a horrible reputation. There were rumors and allegations of employees stealing state property and even smuggling drugs to the prisoners. To get to the bottom of this once and for all, the governor at the time, Neil Goldschmidt, hired judge and director of the state corrections department, Michael Frank, to come and deal with it. Now, Frank was the type of person that was very by the book, and he was there to figure out what was happening and deal with overcrowding if possible. He spent 2 years investigating and building his case, but right before he was going to publicly point fingers, he was killed outside his office. The assailant had stabbed him right through the heart, and police assumed he was robbed and stabbed by a drug dealer called Frank Gable, but it wasn't that simple. Frank's family suspected his murder was to do with what he was investigating, and I'd agree. An eyewitness even claimed to have seen multiple men running from the crime scene the day he was killed. Other eyewitnesses later saw employees carrying several bags of shredded documents out of his office, and that was assumed to be all his research. Gable was convicted either way, and was actually released in June of this year, but the case still remains open since so many of the things Gable said in court just didn't match the crime. Was it a hitman? Was it a reverse sting operation gone wrong? Like, what is the Oregon prison system hiding that they don't want us to know, that they would kill for? And that's it for today's video, guys. I really hope you guys had never heard of any of these mysteries before this video, but if you had, well, what can I do? Sucks to suck, I guess. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!